welcome to the 109th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today, we're going to teach you about getting some press, some PR, connecting with journalists, reporters, getting your mug on TV, on the radio, in print. And this is coming to you from a good friend of mine by the name of Mr. Dean Rotbart. I met Dean, almost 10 years ago, maybe 8 or 9 years ago in Austin. I took one of his classes. I used to call it Newsroom Confidential. It's now called Buzz Snatching. But Dean has had a storied career in PR, in journalism. He knows what he's talking about. He's going to give us some great ideas on how to get coverage, how to get started when you have no budget. How to get more than your fair share of publicity, he says, without dipping into your marketing dollars, and how to determine the best medium for your message. So some important things to learn. As I've mentioned before, I'm recording this just before Valentine's Day 2015, and this year, 2015, is my year of promotion. I've said it before. In interviews, I asked Michael Hyatt about this. He disagreed a little bit with the percentages, but not with the concept. And I say it's 10% product development and 90% promotion. And maybe historically that hasn't been as true, but things are just so noisy today. My son, my 17-year-old son, he showed me this dude it's popular on Vine. 6-second videos. This guy will get 1 to 3 million views of a 6-second video. And that's the attention span of most people nowadays. But with that much noise, what are you doing to stand out? And you know what? Television, newspapers, radio, those still have credibility. And so getting your mug and your ideas into traditional mass media like that still carries a lot of weight. And you know what? If you can get covered for free, and obviously if it's a newsworthy story, you don't have to pay for it. So this is a vital thing. It's something I am focusing on this year. And as I get some wins under my belt on some of these new things I'm trying, I will let you know how I did it. But following Dean's advice is one of the key things that I'm doing. So let's bring on Mr. Dean Rotbart. Dean Rotbart, you've got me nervous because you are a professional journalist, so I have to step next to the microphone, use my deep pipes. But welcome to the Sales Podcast, man. How are you?
Thank you. I will be grading you and issuing a report when the podcast is over.
Oh no!
An analysis, but since you sent me that check ahead of time,
I shouldn't hit the desk or, hey, is this thing on? Should I blow into it, or is that not good?
No, I do it. I mean, I do it all the time, so I think that's fine.
But you're a pro, so you can get away with it. You can say like you planned on it, and they just say, "There's Wes, the meathead."
You know what makes me a pro, Wes?
Tell me.
I declare myself a pro.
Well, you know what they say, that the definition of an expert is you come from out of town and you carry a briefcase.
Yeah, well, I do both. So I'm in Denver, Colorado.
There you go.
Where I'm looking out my window, and we've got a mix of snow and sun, which is beautiful.
Well, we have a mix of rain and sun, so it's similar yet different.
Well, that's good.
I'm at the southern end of your front.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Well, I'm glad when we're recording this, a good place not to be right now is Buffalo, New York.
Oh my gosh.
I'm glad we're not there.
There you go. Well, hey, thanks for taking the time. It's been a while since we hung out together in Austin. But for those that don't know you, other than being in Denver and a pro, would you mind taking a minute or two, give folks a little thumbnail sketch of Dean Rotbart?
I'd be happy.
We'll go down the rabbit hole.
Well, one thing that you and I share in common, well, we share many things in common, but among the things we share in common is we are both podcasters. I have been on the faculty of the Wizard Academy in Austin, Texas, almost from the start. I have the distinction, Wes, of having been in the very first class ever taught at the Wizard Academy. And, excuse me. You can edit that out. I've had the distinction of being in the very first class at the Wizard Academy and have been on the faculty from a fairly early time period. My real background began with consulting and advising Fortune 500 companies and CEOs on how to strategically work on their reputation, specifically with the mainstream media. My background is that I was a reporter and columnist for the Wall Street Journal, and I also headed up Dow Jones Television for a while out of New York. And then I have always had an entrepreneurial itch, and so I started my own publishing and consulting company, and in fact have been doing that now for a couple of decades. And most of what we did in the early days was talk to big corporations. But one day I woke up and I realized there were only 500 Fortune 500 companies, and there are tens of thousands of smaller businesses. So gradually, really pretty much over the last decade, I have focused more on helping small business owners and entrepreneurs in understanding initially how the mainstream media work, not doing PR for them, but doing sort of strategic planning and thinking. And increasingly, because of social networking, I have evolved that. So I used to teach a course at Wizard Academy called Newsroom Confidential, because the focus was on the newsroom. And now my course is called Buzz Snatching, because in fact there are a lot of non-conventional, non-mainstream media ways. Some of my favorite are like YouTube, as an example, Pinterest, of ways of attracting attention to yourself. And so I guess I'm the original buzz snatcher. Buzz snatching, if it has a theme to it, it's getting more than your fair share of publicity, getting more than your fair share of public attention. And that's kind of what I do. I do it in lots of different ways, but pretty much somebody who I work with, whether it is a individual entrepreneur, whether it's a cause, whether it's a product, whether it's a company, the goal is, without having to dip really into conventional advertising dollars, to figure out how to get viral publicity for yourself.
So is it possible to actually craft, intentionally create something viral? I know everybody tries to, but it seems like a lot of times the true viral things are like accidents.
Well, accidents are like broken clocks. I mean, they're accurate they're accurate 2 times a day. And if you're not playing the game, it can't happen by accident. Right. So the truth is that you have to have a baseball-style batting average, which means that you're a Hall of Fame player if you strike out or if you don't get on base 6 out of 10 times.
Mm-hmm. But 7 out of 10 times.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking Ted Williams, but the 3 times or the 4 times, and really it's probably not even that high a percentage. I mean, it's not 30%. It's probably not 20%. Maybe it's 5%, which means that, and it's hard, Wes. So you and I have been talking, we've talking briefly about podcasts. If I do 100 podcasts and I get 5 breakout podcasts, that's pretty darn good. Now, people might be discouraged and say, well, that's horrible. Well, it's not so horrible if those 5 deliver the results that make the other 95 worthwhile. And I can't sit here and forecast very well, which if I work with a client and we put up 50 YouTube videos, I can't forecast. I have instinct that says which ones might go viral, but I'm often surprised at which ones do go viral. And there, again, people get in slumps and they get in streaks. And so sometimes you're lucky and you put up I'm using YouTube, but it could be anything that you do. You write a content piece for a blog. You put up a photo on Flickr or Instagram, and it gets hot. Sometimes you get a streak and you can do 2 or 3 in a fairly short period of time, And sometimes you're in a slump and you keep banging at it for months and months, and it seems like you're getting no place.
Well, so that brings up a couple of questions. I mean, one is how does that business owner know which medium, which platform to dive into, and then how do they stay motivated and encouraged to get those 100 done, let's say, to find the 5?
It's let me take both those questions. First of all, how do you know which one? When I work with clients, I really start by trying to figure out what is their natural affinity. In other words, are they people who lend themselves? If they're not very eloquent, I wouldn't push them into doing a podcast. If they're not very visual, I wouldn't push them towards the photographic or video media. It really has to sort of come from what they're doing. If you're a plumber, depending on how you plumb, it may be different. Let me tell you something. One of my associates here in Denver, who I've done broadcast radio with, and you may recognize the name because he co-hosts Monday Morning Radio with me sometimes, is a guy named David Biondo. And David is basically a whole life insurance salesman. That's what he does for a living. But he and I have worked together and tried to figure out for him, and he's now been working with the Wizard Academy partners to try to figure out how to promote himself. And we've tried different things. And what he ended up doing, and this was not my idea, so I don't take credit for it, I just observe it, is David is a musician. He loves life insurance, but in his off hours, he is a musician, primarily a harmonica player. He also sings and plays guitars. He's kind of a blues, jazzy person. Well, working again with Wizard Academy partners, he put together a series of radio commercials in which he is the harmonica playing life insurance salesman, and he plays the harmonica on his commercials.
Don't they all?
No, they don't, Wes. And what happened is that has worked. In other words, I worked with him on a number of I still thought I was sort of zeroing in on who he is, but on a number of other approaches that were semi-effective. But the one that really worked was doing that. I have, and I don't want to reveal his name, but I have another client who I worked with whose background was in theater, but was trying to get into a financial services visibility space where he wanted to be known for his financial services ability as opposed to his background in theater. Well, again, what that lent itself to, at least the recommendations I put together, was trying to do some street theater on behalf of financial services. He's in Manhattan, so the idea of performances on the street, not to promote a play, but to promote a stock or to promote an investment philosophy. So I think if you actually, instead of trying to impose upon any individual, impose upon yourself something that says, I've got to do YouTube because YouTube is what's hot, or I have to do Instagram because Instagram is what's hot, I think you have to start by saying, what fits me naturally? And then what vehicles are out there that can showcase that?
Very interesting.
There was a second part to that question, which is how do you keep from getting discouraged?
Yes.
You really are the sales whisperer, the sales master. And I don't think it's very different than what I understand. There's a part of sales in all of our lives, whether I'm trying to sell my kids on cleaning up their rooms or whether I'm trying to sell a new client on hiring me. But I've never been, per se, a full-time salesperson. But I've read a lot about it. I mean, I've read all of the Zig Ziglars and other sales coaches, and they basically talk about numbers. How many rejections do you have to get? And each rejection is a step closer to a yes. And so I don't think the game is any different. I think you have to say to yourself, this will work. I've got a good product. I'm a good person. The product may be literally a product. It may be a reputation. It may be a cause. But you have to believe in what it is that you're selling, and you have to keep pushing it until it works. We do know it works. I mean, I can give you phenomenal examples of individuals who using buzz snatching, who using free viral promotion, marketing, publicity tools, have had enormous success. And again, we always can talk about the people who hit the grand slam, to use a sports analogy, in the seventh game of the World Series. But the reality of it is that the real winners in buzz snatching are not necessarily people who are able to get consistently, and there are 30 or 40 million YouTube views. It may be people who can consistently get 1,000 or 2,000 YouTube views, but they are the right viewers. They lead to business. It's the singles. It's being able to consistently generate singles. And in the end, if you're not playing, then you definitely can't win.
Well, that's definitely true. How, kind of going back to how do they know where to start, or from a budgetary standpoint? I mean, do they shift?
I like to start with a budget of zero.
Okay.
I like to say I don't have any money to deal with. Now, sometimes, you can find loose change around the house, and how do you start? Well, there is, Wes, a large component of trial and error. So, okay, somebody's listening to this and they haven't yet done. Again, I'm a big fan of YouTube. They haven't yet done a YouTube video. Do it. You know what it takes to do a YouTube video? You get your iPhone or some other smartphone that's got a video recording method. You get a friend or a family member to set it up. You sit down, you talk honestly into the camera, you upload it to YouTube, and within an hour you've got your first YouTube video. Now, it may be that in time, with some smarts, you can do a lot. There's a lot available online. You can refine the production process. You can get smarter in terms of what the content ought to be. The problem is that too many people sit on their hands and they say, "I don't know where to start." You got to start someplace. Start a blog if you're not doing a blog. Open an Instagram account if you don't have an Instagram account. What motivated you? What gave me? I have done. So, Wes, I do Monday morning radio with Wizard Academy, but I have done dozens of different podcasts. And by the way, I didn't go to podcast school. I went to journalism school.
What?
That's right. I didn't go to podcast school. I went to journalism school, and they taught me how to write for the Wall Street Journal. Podcasting really is, although I was flattered that you called me a professional, and I'm going to put it on my resume. Wes Schaefer says, Dean Rotbart, professional.
There you go.
But the reality of it is that what does it take to start a podcast? You sit down in front of a microphone and you start a podcast. You do not have to be empowered by anybody other than yourself to begin the process. The real bottom line is this: if you're not doing it, that's the mistake. And you can learn by doing. I am certain that if you go back and listen to my early podcasts, or I go back and I listen to your early podcasts, we'll see that we've come many miles in terms of quality and excellence, that we have improved. I can tell you assuredly that because I can look at the numbers of people who listen to Monday morning radio, that my listenership has grown. And I don't always know. Sometimes, I kind of get a consistent level of listeners, the number of people who listen. Sometimes I'm really surprised, something I think will be terrific. I've had one, I won't say who, within the last 2 months, where I was sure it was going to be my all-time record-breaking audience, and it's fizzled pretty much. But I have these surprise guests who come and do really well. Hey, I do have a secret to share with you.
Bring it on.
It's probably a secret but your listeners may not know. So let's assume I'm a listener. I've never done a podcast in my life, and let's say we decide we're going to do a podcast, or I'm going to do a blog. I'm going to write a blog entry. I'm going to do a video. I don't care what the choice you make is. And you don't even have much of an audience. I mean, you don't know who it is that you're going to get to listen or view or read what it is you have to say, because you don't have a big Rolodex, so to speak. But one of the secrets is, and I'm going to give you a specific individual in a minute that we both know, but one of the secrets is A, to have a little bit of chutzpah, a little bit of nerve, and B, to be persistent, and using those to get somebody who does have a following and an audience to agree to be interviewed by you, to be a guest on your podcast. So you interview me, Wes, for your podcast. I've got a large audience. Now, what that means is we're going to cross-pollinate our audiences. I'm going to tell my audiences, hey, I'm a guest on Wes's podcast. And you're going to tell your audience, hey, Dean's a guest on my podcast. Well, that's how you build an audience. So one of the things that I have done, for example, with Monday Morning Radio, it's a free podcast. I mean, I don't get paid to do it. I get paid by the visibility it gives me. I do walk my own talk, Wes, as obviously you do. But what I try to do is I try to invite guests on my podcast who will bring me thousands and sometimes tens of thousands of their own listeners because they're on my program. And so I build my own reputation by affiliating with others. Now, I want to give you the specific example. I actually just wrote a print article that made reference to this. One of the people who hangs out often at the Wizard Academy is Mike Drew. Do you know Mike personally?
Not personally. No,
okay, fine.
I think I've met him there before.
Well, that's okay. So Mike Drew, who variously lives in Canada and Austin, I think he currently lives in Canada. He runs a consulting company called Promote a Book. He's been affiliated again with the Wizard Academy forever. And he helps authors who have a book out. He helps them promote it to the point that he has an amazing track record of getting bestsellers. But Mike is not a salesperson for a living. Mike is a book promoter for a living. But Mike is the most amazing salesperson I've ever seen, only because no rejection phases him. Maybe it phases him below the surface, but on the surface it doesn't faze him. So you say no to Mike, he says thank you and pretends you didn't say no and just keeps at it until he probably drives you crazy enough that you do it. Well, I saw a video, I don't know whether he put it up on Vimeo or YouTube, that he created. He recently, as in within the last couple of weeks, got engaged. And what he did is he put together this was not to sell something, this was maybe to sell his fiancée to be, but he put together a video proposal that what he did with it is he went to a whole bunch of people, and that many of whom were complete strangers to him, and said, I want to put together this proposal video. Will you say something about me and what a great guy I am and what a great husband I would be? And he got a bunch of what I would call C-level actors and musicians and other people who I strongly suspect, I've not talked to him, but I strongly suspect that most of them don't know him. He emailed them or he called them, he did something, and over Skype or other ways, they contributed part of the video. And so he's got a series of people doing things. But the final person, who I know he doesn't know personally, the final person telling his prospective fiancée to participate is Bono of U2. So this guy, because he is dogged and persistent, managed to, and he knows how to pull on the right strings, managed to get Bono into his personal marriage proposal video. Well, I look at that and I say that's exactly what anybody listening to this needs to do, which is you need to be, outrageous in terms of what I teach in buzz snatching is pretty much be outrageous in terms of how you think, what you do, and to the extent that nobody wants to pay any attention to you, then get Bono to be in your YouTube video or to appear on your blog or take Instagrams with Bono. If you want your Instagram photo to go viral, do a selfie with some celebrity. Hang out, be a groupie for a while until you can find some celebrity. And it can be a sports figure, it can be a music figure, it can be an actor, whatever. It can be a politician. Whatever it takes, but that's where you begin to get people to notice you.
That's awesome. That's on YouTube. I'm going to have to look him up.
I'll send it to you. Hey, let me tell you what my wife does. Now, my wife, who is not a journalist, her name is Talia, by the way. She is not a journalist, and she wasn't born and raised in this country, so English isn't even her first language. She has figured out how to do buzz snatching incredibly effectively on Twitter, and I'll tell you what her strategy is. And I'm not going to direct people to her site because she has some very specific causes that she wants to support. But let's assume that for the sake of it, that she wants to. Let me just think of an analogy here. That she wants to get people to go see a movie. A popular movie. That's what she wants to do. Now, my wife has virtually no followers on Twitter because nobody knows who she is, so she doesn't really have an audience. But what she'll do is she'll say, and what's the name of the Hunger Games movie that's currently out? It's like Mockingjay or something.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
So what she'll do, I think it's called Mockingjay. I'm not sure what it's called, but let's say it's. So what she'll do is she'll put out a tweet that says, "Love the movie Mockingjay," and she'll use the movie's hashtag @Mockingjay. Think Jennifer Lawrence is the most beautiful actress in the world, and we'll put the @ sign for whatever Jennifer Lawrence's account is. Now, she does this with some regularity, and what ends up happening is, because of the nature of people's own vanity, and vanity is one of the key things I teach in buzz snatching, how you get vanity to work for you, is she gets the Jennifer Lawrences of the world to retweet her tweets to literally hundreds of thousands of people. So what she does on Twitter, so I'm nobody, but I'll say something flattering about Bill Gates, and it does, again, it's a batting average. It doesn't happen all the time. And if I say the right thing and it catches his attention, the fact that I have 3 people who follow me on Twitter makes no difference. Bill Gates retweets it, to 2.6 million people. My wife has literally had tens of millions of people see her retweets on Twitter, even though she doesn't have a very big following whatsoever. So it is a matter of being savvy, of harnessing what's out there. I don't believe in the philosophy that says if you build it, they will come. I believe in the philosophy that says figure out where they're already going and harness whatever you're doing to what's happening there.
Yeah. I always say this, it's I learned it in real estate. They say build in the way of progress.
Absolutely.
Build with a view, build next to water, or build your house in the way of progress. So, yeah, figure out where they are and go there.
That's correct.
So can we jump into old school, if you will, traditional media, journalism? I mean, it's still important, right? I mean, all the social media stuff is easy, relatively easy, right? Because we can just hop on our computer and we're on. But there's a lot of, you get a big boost if you get interviewed on the Today Show or even your local morning TV news show. I mean, should people still be going after that? And are there some tricks or tips or ways to shortcut that?
Yeah, the quick answer is I still prefer what we'd call the old school conventional mainstream media. The advantage of all the other things we're talking about is that you don't have to deal with the journalist gatekeeper,
right?
Which means, what I have taught for years is how you try to negotiate, bribe, otherwise persuade that gatekeeper to put you on the Today Show, to your local TV or radio program to give you that visibility. And there are tricks and insights And I don't even have to say tricks. They're just rules to follow that will be helpful to do that. That's always, in my mind, still the first choice. I would still rather have I guess in October had the Sunday New York Times feature I have different entrepreneurial businesses. They featured one of my entrepreneurial businesses in a fairly significant feature in the Sunday New York Times. Well, that to me, I do all this social networking, all this other stuff. It just blew away the results and the numbers. The number of what happened is the New York Times does a print story on my business. My business, that one it is called News Bios. It's biographies of journalists that I sell.
Right.
It did a story on that, and the number of visitors to my website, the number of new clients who came in the door, the number of new followers on Twitter beat anything that I could have done or that I've done to date by tweeting or doing videos or things along those lines. It is, a art, not a science. It is an art to get the Sunday New York Times to write about your company. But I can give you a few of the rules, a few of, I think, what are the keys. I mentioned the word before, vanity. Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to write a book about it at some point, Wes. I keep threatening, but it really is a central point of a lot of what I do. If you want to help lower the barriers to the mainstream media, among the things you have to do is you have to identify literally individual journalists that are likely to be predisposed to be at least the right journalist for you. So you can't write the same pitch to 10 random journalists at the New York Times in the hope that one of them will say, well, this is newsworthy. You need to sort of read the New York Times enough to know which 2 or 3 journalists at least write about, it could be broadcast about, whatever it is, the general area that you have some expertise in or that you might be appropriate for. And then you need to sort of peel back the onion layers and figure out how do you approach their vanity. So, for example, I always advise people in my courses that your first contact with a journalist should never, ever be, why don't you do a story about me? The story, what it should be is, so Wes, if you're the journalist and I've identified you as a candidate of somebody I'd like you to feature me, one of the first things I would do is drop you probably these days to get through the clutter out there. I'd probably drop you a U.S. postal mail letter, hand addressed with an actual postage stamp.
What?
Yeah,
Insanity.
Wait, but what's more important, Wes, is I'm not going to say, Wes, you ought to feature me on your podcast. Let me tell you about me. What I would do is say, Wes, I listened to the podcast you did a couple of weeks ago, and it was so valuable. I just wanted to say thank you so much. I listened to all of your podcasts. So, in other words, you start by appealing to their vanity. You don't introduce yourself to a journalist by saying me, 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 me. You really introduce yourself to a mainstream journalist by saying you, 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 you. And what is good to do, especially for the more sophisticated the journalist, it's really good to be able to actually say something intelligent to add to what they reported already. So you have a reporter who covers Warren Buffett at Fortune magazine, and you want them to write about you or to interview you. You start by saying, I read the profile you did of Warren Buffett in Fortune magazine, and I found it really insightful, and it reminds me of something. It reminds me of something I read, something I've done, or this is how it was helpful to me. So in a way, you show your own intelligence to the journalist without being blatant in terms of advertising. I'm intelligent, and I think like you think, and I admire you. So interview me. You're not that straightforward.
Right.
What you are basically saying is, I have something intelligent. So what I'm saying is that one of the secrets is get to know the journalist, figure out how to, without being phony about it, Wes, how to compliment them, how to say something to them kindly before you ever think about suggesting they look at you. Offer them some story ideas that are not about you. One of the greatest journalists value their sources far more than they value PR people or salespeople. So what that means is, and this has worked for me an infinite number of times, is I often will contact a journalist who I have an ulterior motive. Eventually, I want that journalist to write about me or to report on me. But I will often start by contacting that journalist and suggesting a story that I see that I think would be valuable to the journalist about somebody else. So right off the bat, I'm establishing a relationship with a journalist that's not saying, again, it's not me, me, me. It's like, I see something that I think might be of value to you, and it's not about me. And I don't have any dog in this hunt. I have nothing to gain from this other than being a fan of yours and thinking this is the type of story you would like. Now, obviously, to do that successfully, you've got to have a sense of what the kind of story the journalist would like, and you have to be able to present it to them. So it's not, pitching the mainstream media is not a matter of writing a better news release. It's not a matter of having a better 30-second phone pitch, although having a good 30-second phone pitch can work when it is not egocentric. That's the problem with, 99 out of 100 journalists will tell you that, or 99 out of 100 times, probably it'd be better for me to say, journalists will tell you that the people who are pitching them stories are just lousy when it comes to news judgment. What is or is not newsworthy, or is not interesting. It is, the fact you've named a new vice president in your company, you might think that's great news, but no journalist in the world cares about that. I mean, journalists want something that is eye-catching, that is unusual, that is different, that is exceptional. If I know a journalist used to be with Fox Television, and before that with CNBC, Dennis Neal. Dennis has told me that sometimes he'll get a 30-second phone message from somebody that he is attracted to. But almost always those messages are what I would describe as crazy. They're crazy in the sense that they're pitching him something that is so outrageous, so different, so unusual that it gets his attention. If it's something that he's heard 100 times before in different iterations, it doesn't grab his attention.
Yeah. I hear you. Very interesting. Well, thank you, sir. Where can we send people to learn more about you?
I thought you'd never ask. See,
this favorite part of the interview. That's enough about me. Let's talk about me.
Listen, I think there are two places to send them. One is I do something a little different than what you do. It's a variant, again, at mondaymorningradio.com. It's a nice website. It features sort of the collective wisdom, not only, it's all aimed at small business owners and entrepreneurs. It's not only my wisdom, but it's Roy H. Williams and a lot of the people who hang out at the Wizard Academy or have learned from it. It's a good website. They can go there. They can sign up to get the podcast for free or to get posts for free, and I think that's pretty good. My Monday Morning Radio Twitter account, if you will, actually doesn't have Monday Morning or radio in the Twitter address whatsoever. It is from something that I relatively recently launched called Reputation Tool Chest, and the Twitter account is the @Rep Tool Chest. So like Reputation Tool Chest, it's @Rep Tool Chest. And in addition to sort of tweeting about what I do on Monday Morning Radio, I tweet about a lot of other reputation tools. And for me, reputation is just another way of saying buzz snatching, promotional publicity tools. So that's the way to do it. And I think that's more than enough. I think they should be listening to what you're doing. I think they should be listening to what you're doing because you're providing valuable insights on a regular basis as well.
Well, because I'm bringing on guys like you.
Yeah, something like that. Us professional podcasters, the ones who know when there's no cough button, how to cough.
Man, all right. Hey, you're just proving that you're human, and I know you scheduled that in. That was a fake cough.
Well, not only that, but there's a course I actually took in journalism school called coughing on the radio. It's just a short course, but I took it. Did well. Did well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming on the show. And so again, everybody, that's twitter.com/reptoolchest.com. And you can visit thesaleswhisperer.com/Dean-Rotbart for the notes and links to everything there. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So what makes you an expert? Have you declared yourself an expert for all the world to see and hear and know and believe? It really does come down to that. Now, granted, you should be good at what it is you say you are an expert in. And as I opened with, there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of people putting themselves out there as experts. But if you can back it up, if you have testimonials, if you have awards, if you have glowing recommendations, if you have case studies, before and after type results that you have documented, that will cut through the clutter. But you need to be putting it out there. It needs to be on a cycle. It needs to be constantly put back in front of people. I'm actually going through my blog right now, 600 posts. And while I make new ones, like these podcasts are a post on my website, and I write the weekly whisper every week, I'll still write one or two new articles as well on selling or marketing automation or Infusionsoft, things like that. But I'm going through old posts and updating them and refreshing them and re-releasing them as new posts, and I'll put on there, originally, like just today, I updated one from way back in 2009 that I updated last July in 2014, but I'm talking about the art of the close. So I'm launching that again starting in April, and so it was timely. It made sense. I freshened it up just a little bit, changed a couple of stories because they were dated, but otherwise it was the same post, and then re-released it with today's date. And then I'm using a program called, by calendar, it's called CoSchedule. Let me pull this up here. Calendar settings. So you can check that out, and it's a great tool. It starts for free, and as you recommend it to others, they extend your free trial. Okay, so go check that out. Calendar settings, upgrade, need help, open in web app. So yeah, you can check out coschedule.com, and it's a great way to share your content, right? But then you can schedule it in the future. You can do it for the next day, the next week, the next month, and you can pick all of your social media profiles to get the word out. So that's one of the little things I've been doing lately to help make sure I'm staying in front of my audience, okay? And you need to do the same thing. But as I mentioned, the Art of the Close is coming up, theartoftheclose.guru. You can register now and save yourself a couple $100 because the price will go up each month before we start. So head on over there. You'll get immediate access to 30-day sales growth. That's a $97 value. And you'll also get access to the archive of the last time I did this class. So you can immediately begin learning and applying things, and then what you learn or may have questions on, we're going to cover live over 7 live calls, okay? So avail yourself of that benefit, a little tool to grow, and please leave a few kind words on the podcast. You can visit thesalespodcast.com and leave a 5-star review. Most appreciated. And as always, remember to sell different.